Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're here live with Co-working Live and we're worldwide. And we're excited that you're here with us today. And so today is our Smarter Start Bootcamp. We love Mondays where we actually dive deep into talking about things that will help us to have a smarter start in our business every single day. When we started this particular set of episodes where we would bring in, we used to do them on Saturdays, and where we had a lot of entrepreneurs who were available to jump in and watch, or people who were aspiring entrepreneurs and aspiring inventors, or even some who were actually, seasoned in business, but they were just getting started with their products, their own products. And we started off with the thought in mind that we would create this little Monday boot camp, just to help people who were new in business. But what happened is that we had seasoned entrepreneurs saying, hey, I still need to do those kinds of things. Hey, I haven't thought about those things that much. And so, I really need, that extra push. And thank you so much for providing this. Can you talk about this or can you talk about that? And so it's been amazing to get the requests that we've gotten, from different ones, just to, keep everybody pretty solvent in all, having this rich landscape of material that you can go back and watch and say, okay, now I know I need to, dusty up on these particular things. And you know what, I haven't looked at this particular, my 5-year budget in a long time. And I haven't really, updated my business plan. I don't know what a living business plan is. I haven't put those things into place, and let me watch this video and see if I can get some clues as to how to go forward, and even if you're not able to get the time to have a full advisory session with us, or, to get into our coaching program, because, sometimes we're full and we just don't have the ability to take on more people. But you can have these little moments of, infusing yourself with amazing content that is educational and that's business related, that will help you do business better. And so that's why we're here. That's why we exist. That's why we have co-working, because we want to have a space where people can jump in the room. And if you're interested in being in the room, go to our website, revworldwide.org. You can click the link at the appropriate time when we're getting started, and it'll put you in the Zoom room with us. So you can be in our studio audience and you can ask questions. And when we open up the floor for discussions, you can be a part of those discussions. But today we're going to be talking about the value economy. And I got a little short video that's going to give you the rundown of what we're going to be sharing about today. And so I want you to watch that, and then we'll jump back in and go forward with talking about how the value economy can affect your company, your life, and or your aspiring business. Okay, Javon, let's roll the video.
Welcome to our podcast episode on the value economy. Today, we'll explore how this new paradigm prioritizes human capital over profits, processes, and projects. The value economy is all about valuing people over things. It's a fundamental shift that prioritizes human capital as the primary asset. But it's not just about people. The value economy integrates sustainable practices and social responsibility at its core. It's about creating value that benefits everyone. Advancements in technology are driving the value economy forward, facilitating new forms of value exchange. It's exciting to see how innovation is transforming the way we create and exchange value. In the value economy, wealth is redefined to include social, cultural, and environmental capital, not just financial assets. It's about creating value that benefits everyone, not just a select few. Many companies are already adopting business models that prioritize human capital and sustainable practices. These companies are leading the way in creating value that benefits everyone. Communities and collaborative networks play a crucial role in building resilient economic ecosystems. By working together, we can create value that benefits everyone. The circular economy is an essential component of the value economy. It focuses on reuse, recycling, and regeneration, creating value from waste and reducing our impact on the environment. New tools and frameworks are emerging to assess value beyond traditional economic indicators. These metrics provide a more holistic view of value creation. Businesses can thrive in the value economy by focusing on human capital and holistic value creation. It's about creating value that benefits everyone, not just shareholders. Innovative platforms and technologies are emerging to facilitate participation in the value economy. These tools make it easier for everyone to create and exchange value. Thanks for joining us today as we explored the transformative concept of the value economy. Start creating value that benefits everyone today.
So when we started working on this concept of the value economy, one of the things that we realized is some of the concepts that are our core values, and Javon, you can pull up the slides, are the core value of many companies that are very, very successful. And, I'm going to throw out some names in a little bit. We won't have time to delve into every one of them and to really jump into understanding how all of these companies tick. But we do want to mention them because there are some things that are the same about each and every company. And because they're the same, we want you to be able to, pay attention that although their core mission may be different, although they're, at their core, the values may list differently, in terms of how they have things listed out, but in terms of how they value their people, how they value the earth, okay, and our part that we play to sustain it, how they value even the concept of reusing and not wasting anything, is pretty much the same across the companies. And so with that said, what it does is it gives us a different view of, what the companies stand for. And, I just, was really impressed uh, with some of the things that they were able to do and how they do what they do. And so, with that said, I wanted to just kind of bring some of those things out as we share. And so, Dry, can you bring up our slides? Thank you. So our whole concept today is being able to approach prioritizing human capital. And I have to give, a shout out to the family of the person who actually centered my attention on this years ago, who started me in the process of writing, uh, the book, and that is not finished yet, but we're working towards the end of the talking about the value economy and how do we prioritize human capital. And so the gentleman's name is he was known to us as Dad McCurtis, but Luther McCurtis, Pastor Luther McCurtis, who has a indelible imprint in the lives of every person that I know that knew him, because he was one that created a company that was designed to help people at the time get jobs, and keep jobs. And that company, EPA, Employment Aptitude and Placement Association, was really involved in placing people in jobs with livable wages. But as a part of that, he really desired to help people understand that the person was more important than anything, and that their companies needed to invest in human capital, invest in the person, because when they did, their investment wouldn't languish. They would always get a return, on their investment, and so we're going to talk more about the concept of prioritizing human capital. Next slide, please. So as we jump into this, we're going to really look at it from three areas. We need to understand the value economy itself, how it works, what it means. And then we need to look at, the sustainability of it and its social impact. And then, of course, innovation in technology and the part that innovation and technology plays in being able to invest in the humans that are vested in our companies. Next slide, please. So we're going to think about, how do we understand the value economy? Next slide. So it really is a concept of redefining wealth. When people think about wealth, it's one of the three pillars of our financial structure. But when we're looking at it from the standpoint of, a lot of times financial controls, money, the different resources that, make up our wealth system. And so we're not really seeing it from the standpoint, or I should say, the perspective, of who it is that is responsible for, ensuring that wealth is maintained. And when we want to take this picture of this in our mind, I want you to really have a shift, or I should say even a replacement in your asset perception, because the perception that we have is that it takes money, to create a company, which it does. It takes some resources to do things, but the part that humans play sometimes can be thrown into the background, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, or what they call a solopreneur. What happens is, you see things from the standpoint of, I've got to get enough resources. I have to have enough money. I have to have enough money. If I don't have enough money, if I can't meet my budget, if I can't do this, then nothing will be done. And I'm coming to explain to you today that those concepts and those ideas started inside of a human. They came to the human from somewhere. And I do want to, make sure that we don't lose the perspective of understanding that our ideas, are placed in us, and those ideas usually are the solutions to problems. And so we do want to have that as a perspective. I call them witty inventions because, of course, in my faith tradition, okay, in the scriptures, we know that what we receive, in terms of ideas, comes from our Father, and our Father God. And so that is, I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm not giving particular credit, for that, for the ideas coming to us. But I do want us to understand that the ideas, when they're seated inside of us. And then from there, they grow into everything that they are, and sometimes we don't value ourselves even, when we are looking at the concept of where an idea comes from, especially when we look at it, in its full form, and it's now become a business, or it's now become a product or a service, or for that matter, a process. I never forget, in my own career as being a serial entrepreneur. And I'm not talking about the career that I had in corporate America, or that I had in an education system, or anything like that. I'm just talking about the career that I've had as an entrepreneur. Many times I discounted the concepts that were coming to me, and didn't really pay attention to their full breadth until one day I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is, it's a behemoth. Okay. It's affecting so many lives. People are really buying into the concept. They're taking advantage of it. They're using it. Man, it's more than what I even conceived. And I tell you, I've had a lot of those moments. I found a video yesterday, a set of videos yesterday, and I was looking at something that had been created when it was in its infancy and then looking at what it is now. And I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So when we are thinking about, our concepts, our designs, and how they have come, and even the resources that they brought us, the financial remuneration, the monies that we've made, and the wealth that we've amassed, we've got to be thinking about it from a standpoint of it's an outgrowth. It did not start as money, or it did not start as a resource. It started, as an idea that was seated in us, and the asset perception has to be different. We have to be able to view the idea even as an asset. That's what we call intellectual property. Okay. And then when we give it its value, okay, because we're talking about the value economy. When we give it its value, we cannot separate it from its creator, from the person who gave it life. Okay. We have to have a shift in our asset perception, because I believe when we do that, then we'll begin to value ourselves and view ourselves differently. When I actually took a look at everything I actually did it not that long ago, maybe a few days. Matter of fact, it was, I think, maybe last Wednesday or Thursday. We were off Thursday. We were on the holiday. And when we were on holiday, I took the time to sit down with my tablet and I drew out a mind map, and looking at all of the things that I have my hand in right now, and where they fit together, and how they bless the lives of the people that I'm coming in contact with, and what it is that I need to do to make sure that they're sustainable. How do I breathe life into some things that may not be working as well right now, because of the fact that there's just not enough people to push the train down the track. And so how do I bring in more people, get more human capital vested in the process and in the project, so that we can make it what it needs to be? There has to be a shift, that from us seeing things as, work, or as, this concept, to seeing it at with the value that it has, with the value that it is, so that we can, begin to sow into the people, and the people can continue to, give life to the concept. So we have to include, social, cultural, and environmental capital in this concept of having a value economy. We look at the concept itself, but we got to look at, the people that will be needed to make sure this is a thriving, viable concern, that the business is moving. Okay. And, that takes, we've got to look at that from a social standpoint. And then we got to look at it from a cultural standpoint. How do we get others to buy into our vision, and how do we get them to understand it and to value it as they're working with us? And then, of course, the environmental capital that goes into it. How do we, use sustainable practices, and how do we make sure that we are not wasteful in anything that we do? And then there's some broader implications of wealth, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. Let's go. Next slide, please. So the business models of the value economy are, so important, because it is a human-centered design. We look at, of course, we've done empathy maps, and we've talked about, having, our avatar, or becoming our avatar in theory, so that we could make sure that we're serving people, in ways that make, powerful and, sense. Okay. Because again, we are really valuing people over process, people over products, people over projects, people over profits, and so we start there, it's human centered. But then we also have to take advantage of the concepts that we can use technology for the things that technology can do. And we use humans for the higher concepts and things that only a human can do. So we got to look at these human factors, and pay attention to every part of the broad, uh, aspects of, our human-centered design. And this really does come from, design theory. And we've talked about design theory. We've done a whole episode on that. Matter of fact, I think we've done 2 episodes on design theory. So I want you to go back and take a look at those, because it breaks down the concept, and helps us to understand how we design things, and that we have to design with our end user in mind, but also with the persons who are helping us, to make this beautiful widget gadget company, what it is, in mind as well, and so we look at things from those standpoints. But then when we're looking at some of these case studies of human-centric companies, we can see, how they operate, and really pay attention to, the part that they play in this landscape of helping us to see, how value economies that prioritize people, work. And so one such company is Warby Parker. They're an American eyewear company, and they revolutionized the eyeglass industry. They were founded in 2010, and basically there were 4 friends who came together: Neil Blumenthal, Dave Gilboa, Andrew Hunt, and Jeffrey Rader. And while they were still students at Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, it's a business school of that particular university. And their name was inspired by 2 characters from Jack Kerouac's writings, Warby Pepper and Zag Parker. Okay, sorry about that. But when you're looking at their business model, they designed its frames in-house. They sell directly to their consumers. They bypass all the intermediaries to keep their costs low, which is another customer-centric kind of concept. Their affordable pricing has it such that they can start their glasses at about $95, including the lenses. They have a home try-on program. It really is designed with the end user in mind. And they've got this omni channel approach, which they initially were an online only retailer, but they operate over 200 physical stores across the US and Canada now. But the concept itself was for them to have something that would give people more control over their pricing. It gave them more control over, in other words, when I'm saying more control of the pricing, in other words, they could choose, to have a lower priced set of frames if they wanted to, and they could choose to try their frames on at home. Now there's software that allows you to see what the glasses will look like on your face, from the website. These are awesome, awesome concepts. And this virtual try-on approach, for iPhone 10 and above, really has changed a lot for people who, want to be able to be sure about how the frames will look on their face without having to wait for lenses to get to them in the mail. And then, having eye exams in all of these different locations, where people can go and have their eyes examined, get their prescription, and then they can use the software to go from there. I think that's amazing. But one of the things that I really, look at is that they are very, very conscious of employee satisfaction and growth. They're socially responsible with how they do things, and they do really engage the community, but they really are using sustainable materials, neutral operations. All of these things really fit into the value economy concept. Okay, so let's look at a couple of other companies. I want you to be really thinking about when we're looking at this. Okay, what will you do now that you're moving around? With this new knowledge. How are you going to um, uh, e- explore the concept of a value-centric company from now on, and what will you be um, paying attention to? And then how will you use that information to help change things, for what in the way that you're doing it? Okay. So one of the other companies that I have had an opportunity to uh, partake of their value economy in that respects is the Ritz Carlton, and I know that the Ritz Carlton, seemingly is a very expensive hotel, and or costly hotel, I guess I should say. But there are some things that really sets them apart from other companies. One of the things is how they treat their guests, and the other thing is how they treat their employees. Okay. And so those two things alone, their commitment to personalized service and attention to detail really, really sets them apart in the hospitality industry. And it's gotten them the name that they have. But the way that they, prioritize taking care of their employees also is something that has set them apart. And and we don't have a time to go through a full case study of the Ritz Carlton today. We'll do it at another time, but I just wanted to bring them out there. Another one is Patagonia. They align their brand values with environmental sustainability and social responsibility, but they also prioritize their employees above, their profits. They have a very, very transparent supply chain, and they are very active in the environmental space, and making sure people know that they're committed to the values of no waste, and so some other companies that you can take a look at are Trader Joe's. And one other one is Nordstrom's. Okay, so I just want you to kind of look at these companies because they have some, ideas about how their employees should be treated, and how their customers should be treated. Now, these are mostly retail chains or food service people in the food service industry, but you can do your own search for companies that prioritize their employees and their customers over their profits. And I tell you, a long list will come up because there are a few that are out there that give you some practices that you can take a look at, that something that you can then potentially, infuse into your practices. Okay. And then, these success stories of these companies, because the thing is, which is interesting to me when looking at the companies, I was able to see where they have had year over year growth, financially and even with their customers, by being a value economist, human centric, company, a company that prioritized, having no waste. Those types of values have entered into an area for them that has helped to improve their bottom and top line revenues. Okay. And so we want to take a look at that because it does speak to, something, that you can point your finger at and say, okay, I want to be like that company because their values have created for them the ability for them to do well in the industry. Next slide, please. So, within the guise of the value economy, there's this concept of community and collaboration. And, this is not just designed for people to be thinking about community and collaboration within their company, but this is within and without. Building an economic resilience is a very powerful thing that you can do. Being able to future proof your company and make it so that your company can be, sustained for the long haul. And, there's something to be said when you actually have the concept of, being, resilient. We've done a previous episode on business and building out companies that are sustainable, but also having resilience. Being able to recover from economic setbacks is huge. And when you are in a situation where you have built resilience as a value in your company, then it changes things, because people, who might see you going through something, instead of jumping ship, they jump in to help. Okay. They go further in because they recognize that the way out is, by moving further in, to the situation and helping, to build out the company in a way that makes it, have that bounce back. We talked about that in our previous episodes, having bounce back in your business. And so it's the ability, of the economy, to, the economy that you're building, to withstand, prevent, and quickly recover from major disruptions, to your economic base. So you've got to be able to become resilient. It's not something that your company may be born with. Although you can try to infuse it with these concepts, from the very beginning, but until you go through your first little hurdle, okay, you don't really know, if you have done it properly, or if you, are, paying attention to all of the pieces. So, you have some key aspects of, economic resilience, and that you'll need to be putting together in your company to make sure that you're building out this economic resilience for the long haul. The first thing is that you got to be able to absorb the shocks. Okay. And then you have to be able to adapt and recover. Sometimes things that happen, that they don't mean that you have to turn the page and start over. Okay. It just means that, again, that you have to absorb the shocks. Okay. And so you have to be able to foresee, adapt to, and leverage the conditions that change in our society. Sometimes things change, and it means that what you're doing may not be able to be done the same way. Sometimes what you're doing may not be able to be done at all, and you might have to, we talked about pivoting or persevering. Sometimes you got to pivot. You stay alive, the company stays alive, but it has a brand new product to help people in a new economy or a new set of social conditions, and having the capacity to recover quickly, from a shock, withstand the shock, avoid the shock altogether is important. And then you got to be able to minimize the losses. Okay. These aggregate losses that you've experienced during these disruptive times, you got to be able to minimize the effect of those losses on your company. And so those things really do help you to build out the economic resilience that you may need. But then, that comes again from, the good people, whether you're a solopreneur and you're building within yourself the resilience, or whether you have a team, that is something that you have got to be doing, across the board. There is power in collaboration. And sometimes when you're small, you may have to collaborate with other companies, with other types of companies, and sometimes other companies in your same industry, to make sure that you guys are all able to withstand, some of the issues that happen, or that you all come up together in the opportunities that might be, facing everyone. When you have community-driven economic growth, I tell you, there's nothing like it, because you have something that is exponential in its effects. And so I am saying to you, that you have to think about things from the standpoint of, because I know a lot of times we're so busy looking at our competitors as our enemy, when really, our competitors, are not necessarily your enemy. There's several ways that you can use them. And so when you have community driven economic growth, sometimes it even comes from people who are competing in your same industry. They help to drive the growth because maybe you're doing something a different way, and that might be driving growth back to your company, or maybe you guys both together are able to serve each other's clients based on how things are presented. I've been in that situation before where I became a supplier to one of my competitors because I had the service that they were not offering, and they needed that service. And so the bottom line is, instead of them losing their clients altogether, it was better for them to continue doing what they were doing and allow their clients to become served by our company for the things that we provided in the same space. And so I'm saying that community and collaboration are very, very important. Next slide, please. Sustainability and social impact. We want to look at, not only is this concept of being a value economist sustainable, but, what is the social impact of it? Next slide. So the core of the value economy are really, is really, for that matter, supported in these foundations, sustainable practices as the foundation. Okay. And when I'm talking about sustainability, I'm talking about sustainability from the standpoint of our human capital, from the standpoint of our resources and how we use them and not wasting anything. And, the concept of being able to, understand, what it is that we have available to us in our resources and how we can, make those work and go further for us. And then having social responsibility, corporate social responsibility is a huge, huge, huge trend. And I would say that if you can design your company to become socially responsible and not view this as a trend or use it as a trend, and make it a core value, then it actually helps to fuel your company in an area that is something that you have no idea its impact. Okay. When people see your company as a company that has certain types of values, they choose to use you over other companies for that reason. Okay. And then the long-term impact that, the concept of being a value economist can have, on your company is huge. When people know that you prioritize your, clients and customers over your profits, you prioritize your employees over your profits, and even over your process. I tell you, they look at you as a viable company to purchase from. I will give you an example of this in a minute, but I want you to kind of just think about, how you're viewed in your industry. Why do people come to you? Why do people purchase from you? Why do people stay with you? Okay, the answers to those questions surely will lie in one or more of these core values. So having some sustainable practices where people see you being responsible, in your company, from the type of furnishings and materials that you use. I mean, we have a no waste policy at our company, so we don't use paper for a lot of things. We print very little, and when we do print, we try to print on recyclable paper if we can, gain access to it. We try to use, machines that, are made with materials that are sustainable and that are biodegradable if possible. We try to be very sensitive to reusing. I mean, you have no idea, in the companies that I've had in the past, how many times I suited the entire company from a thrift store. Okay, because we were able to find, thrift stores or stores that sold reused furniture for businesses. One time I got some amazing banker's desks, and that was at a time when desks were a big deal. Before we have these desks that raise up and down. Okay, but at that time, for me, it was so important for me to have, to give new life to something that had been utilized before, so that we could, take the rest of the funds that we had and put them into another area, but also not see some beautiful wood desks end up in a landfill somewhere. That was just a big deal for me. And it's a deal breaker for me to opt to do something different if I have the ability or the availability of the materials and things that we need, from a source where we are reclaiming or reusing or recycling, some particular material. So that's a part of every company that I've ever had. But I want to say that, when you start thinking about it for your company, think about where you can, infuse this. Years ago, I used to write a lot of blog posts, and I wrote some for other companies, but one of the blog posts that I remember writing was one that really got people thinking about, encouraging the people in their company to bring bags and reuse bags, to carry their lunch in bags that were reused, as opposed to purchasing, things that are, um, or for that matter, things that are going to be thrown away in one use. And so um, we talked about having lunch pails, and we had a big resurgence of lunch pails, in that season, in the company where I was, because we talked about the concept of not, wasting. And so if they were going to use a bag, then it needs to be a bag that was reused. And if they had the capacity to purchase, lunch pails or some sort of a lunch bag that could be washed and, reused every day, then they should do it. And even at that time, I purchased, a really cute little bag, and I still use that bag today. And it's been more than 10 years, and so when we're thinking about these concepts of, being sustainable, you got to, throw some things out there, so that others in your company will understand your sustainable practice and how you would like to see them, utilize those practices within the company. And then being socially responsible has more to do with viewing the than it does with, making something happen. Viewing something as an opportunity and then weighing in on it to help, socially establish a consciousness, and making it a part of your culture for people to treat others, with respect, and to value what they bring to the table, to make sure that people outside of your company sees your, social responsibility, and to not use it as, only a way to say, okay, hey guys, we're socially responsible, we're doing this. But no, make it a part of your culture. Because when you make it a part of your culture, then everyone in your company can begin to take on what it is that you're modeling from the helm, from the head, and having this long-term impact on industries. I never forget when I was working with a vendor, and they were talking about, we just love working with your company, and this is why. Now I'm buying from them, but they were so excited about how we did business, and what it is that we do. And, they were discounting our prices. They were, causing other companies that were like ours to get a better discount because of them understanding how we do what we do and what other companies like us needed. I mean, it was just an amazing effect. So you can have a long-term impact on your industry and on other industries that serve your industry when you demonstrate your core, your value economy, when you demonstrate to people what you do and how you do it. Next slide, please. So there are some contributions that the circular economy makes upon the value economy. When you have principles of reusing, recycling, regeneration, and understanding that this again is putting something back into your human capital, helping them to understand their impact on the environment and how they can help to, again, value things in our world in a way that will cause us to become less of consumers and more of participants in making sure that we don't waste and that we value, where we live and how we live. Okay. And so it's a very big part of everything in creating value when we are able to, push forth this education and help people to understand less raw materials, less waste, fewer emissions, and how it works. And so I'll give you some, case examples and best practices. We talked about Warby Parker and how they use sustainable materials, but there are other companies that do the same. I know of some service-based businesses that made decisions not to have larger offices, and so we're thinking about one in particular was the Edison company, in California. They are, Southern California Edison. And at a time when people were building larger buildings and doing all this stuff, really a long time ago, we're not talking about in recent years, we're talking about back in the early 90s, they made a decision to ditch all of their main offices. Okay. And I knew the gentleman who was their architect, and for a lot of those offices and buildings. And he was like, okay, I'm out of a job. I got a pink slip and I've got to move somewhere else. So he was selling his home because he, needed to downsize, and he needed to move to another place where he could actually begin to do work in, a different, it was still going to be in architecture, but in a different kind of field in architecture. But it was kind of interesting when I heard his story and what he was saying about what the company decided to do. They sent people home back then to work from home. Okay. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Very few people working in their buildings, and a lot of what they were doing, they were able to do, from home over a computer. And it happened that their company, values did, provide for them, better bottom lines, but it also gave a good model for what can happen in a company when it makes a decision. Instead of them waiting until the pandemic or something like that happens and everybody now has to go home, making a decision that this is better for the economy, this is better for the company, this is better for our employees, for them to be able to make a choice, in some areas. And so I just wanted to bring that out because I think it's really important. Some best practices is to look and see how circular economy can really, affect your company. What can your company do? What is it that you can provide? Something simple like putting a recycling bin in your break room is a big deal. Okay. Making a decision, to have a sustainable design within your company, choosing to use less raw materials and to develop a product on top of something that already exists. Those are really important values. And, even in how you distribute your product, okay, and what it is that, it will take to get your product to market, with fewer emissions. How can you use drones or other types of things to deliver? It's really important for you to be thinking about some of these best practices and seeing what it is that you can do to participate in a circular economy, because it does help to push the value back where it belongs, okay, which is really on the people, okay, the people who are doing the work. Okay, next slide, please. So for innovation and technology, let's take a look at how these two affect the value economy. Next slide. So what is technology's role in the value exchange? Well, technological advancements drive change. They really do. And as you are, constantly being fluid and looking at how innovation, is driven through some of the technology advancements in the things that you do, it's really important for you not to get stuck in a place where you are constantly saying, we are going to stay using what we use, and this is not something that we can, evaluate. I tell you, AI changed things for a lot of people, and people who were able to take on the good areas in which AI has been able to help them innovate, or for that matter, provide, technological changes that make work easier for their employees. I mean, were kind of companies that, did really benefit, so you have to be able to understand, how do we facilitate new forms of value exchange? What is it that we can do to stay in contact with our customers? I mean, the cell phone itself was an innovative tool, a technological tool that made it easier for us to serve people, by allowing them to order from their phones, allowing them to interact with customer service over the phone without having to make a phone call. Okay. Um, Giving people an app where they could participate and, get extremely, important exchanges with the company for loyalty rewards and things of that nature right from their cell phones. The impact that traditional economic models received, from technology, is huge. And when you're looking at, how these models, are out there now, okay, and look at what they were like 50 years ago, we know that technology has had a role in making it so that they can, people who use traditional economic models could really become more engaged with their customer base and even with their, with their employees. Next slide, please. Now, what are some practical applications? Well, we have to be able to have metrics for measuring holistic value. How do we measure whether we're doing a really good job? I mean, we can use polls and surveys, and there are ways for us to check in with our teams that are working with us, sending out little short 2 to 3 question surveys and polls, inside of our ecosystem that we use for communicating with our employees and our teams, our contractors, is really going to be a good way to go, because people need to be able to weigh in and show you what you could do better or tell you what you are doing well, and some strategies for business adaptation. You've got to be able to understand that if you really want to adapt, some of these processes that we're talking about, so that you can become more of a value economy in your industry, or for that matter, even in your company. Some of them are very easy, and simple to adapt. Some of the things that we put out here today, prioritizing your people over your profits. What are some ways that you can do that? Well, I mean, you can start by just investing in them, giving them opportunities for growth inside the company, giving them opportunities to get a break. Okay. If they need one, and not feel like, they're going to lose their job if they need to take a day off or 2 days off for a mental health break, or for that matter, making it so that they have a place, that they can take, a short nap, or, get a rest period right there in your office, if that's something that is possible for you to do. And then having some innovative tools and resources, for having a value economy is going to be huge, because when you have the ability for people to choose their benefit plans and choose how they're going to use some of the funds, being able to elect, to take a massage over having those funds, automatically go to a traditional healthcare, option, it's big for someone, making sure that they have adequate childcare, as an option. These are things that, companies just need to be more mindful about. How do I give back to the people who are giving to our company? And yes, I know that they're working and they're getting paid for it, but there's more to sewing in to your team than their financial remuneration. You've got to be thinking about their emotional, their health, their mental health, their spiritual context that you provide them. Some of their benefits and even educational. Sometimes people, value being able to have, some sort of schooling, or for that matter, other kinds of professional development. And it's important for them. Small companies overlook this sometimes because it may not seem like it's in the budget. But if there's something that you can do that makes it easier, even though you might not be able to give them a full ride scholarship, being able to weigh in on certain kinds of discounts, or maybe even supplying their books or whatever it is, those are the kinds of things you want to be thinking about. Something innovative that still helps your company to remain, in relevant, in this area for in the mind and heart of the teams that are working with you. Next slide, please. So, the last thing that I really want to talk about is how do you engage with the value economy? Well, you got to be able to incorporate the principles into your life and your work. Okay. If you're watching this and you are working for someone, working with someone, incorporating some of these principles, are key, to even, and maybe even sharing this video, with others, that could be something that's key to helping people understand that there is another economy, that everything is not designed around our societal norms, if I can say it that way, that there is something that can be done to help improve in your company and its value system. And looking at, ways that you can become more educated about it and learn more, about how things can be done. There are some upcoming events and learning opportunities, that we have. Our Q3 summit that will be coming up, where we're going to be talking about the value economy. My book will be out, before the end of the year, where you can actually read about the value economy. But there are some other books that talk about, prioritizing people over, the profits of a company. And, take the time to read and, research this concept, because I think it really will infuse you with something that is powerful. And then embrace these new wealth paradigms of, giving back, having sustainable practices and designing, your company in a way that its core values fit within the value systems that we're talking about. I put this book up here by Meredith Elliott Powell, Winning in the Trust and Value Economy, because this is the guide to sales success and business growth. And it, in this book, it talks about, some of the concepts that we have talked about today. But I really do want you to be looking for material that will infuse you with, some tools, okay, to help you become a better value economist and placing the value back where it belongs. Well, this has been Patience Rose, Dr. Patience Rose, with Co-working Live with Red Worldwide. I hope this has been an educational and informative episode today. And I believe that if you will take it and use it, it will give you something to give back to the people that you work with. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you again next time.